Hi, welcome to Cuppa Tea Tarot. I'm T, and I don't always talk like I'm working in customer service, but sometimes I do. I think I filmed that intro like 50 billion times, but we move because if I don't, this video will never actually be made. So, continuing. I'm new to TarotTube. Well, not really. I've been watching and commenting on videos for about 2 years now, but things were just getting too interesting and too spicy, too spicy over here, and I wanted to be able to participate finally. So here I am with my own channel where I will be doing VRs and interesting tarot discussion, and I have a couple of series planned. But until then, I wanted to start off my channel with a really interesting tag created by Janaki at Catomancy Tarot called hashtag Tarot Origin Story. And the story behind this tag is really interesting in itself because Janaki is using the answers from it for her grad school dissertation research. And I will say it's really nice to see that there's someone else on TarotTube that is in a post-grad program. I'm in law school, hopefully my last year, hopefully. If not, I will go crazy. But so it's really cool to see that there's someone else stuck in academia as well. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. There are 6 of them, and it starts off with question number 1. What was your religious upbringing like? My religious upbringing was pretty standard actually. I was raised in an AME megachurch. And if you've never seen a megachurch, I'm gonna put up a picture of one. Not my specific one because it's pretty close to my house. So, but just a general one, and mine was huge. It was pretty huge. It's pretty well known and also rife with some scandals. So there's also that. And for most of my childhood, my mom was an usher at the church, and so we went every Sunday, and I also went to Sunday school every Sunday. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really paying attention much. I would bring my stuffed animals, and my mom would like abandon me in the balcony. So I would have my stuffed animals with me while she was passing out programs. But it wasn't like a very strict thing at all. Like I had friends that they weren't allowed to watch Harry Potter because that was witchcraft, and witchcraft is of the devil, even though it was fictional. I had friends who couldn't celebrate Halloween, so it wasn't like a hardcore like that. Um, but I did end up going to Catholic school for middle and high school, and being not Catholic and going to Catholic school is definitely an experience. Would not recommend it to most people. I mean, if you think you can handle it, then good on you, but I personally would not do that again. It wasn't like that bad, but I definitely felt a bit isolated, especially at first because I didn't know anything. And the assumption was that like, okay, everyone here is Catholic, but there were quite a few students who weren't, because there was I was a part of the scholarship program in my city, and it placed kids from the city into private schools that were in the county. And most of the private schools in my area are Catholic, so it just kind of ended up being the way the cookie crumbled. And it was definitely an adjustment. That's what I'm gonna say. It was an adjustment. We had mass once a week in school. We prayed right after we did the Pledge of Allegiance. We had theology class. It was required for every year. We celebrated all the holy days, so it was pretty intense, but it wasn't as intense as it could have been. There were definitely schools in the area that were way more intense, but like we weren't like being forced to learn like creationism in science class. Like we learned evolution, but there were some schools that like they didn't even like let you learn evolution. So I got used to it eventually. I never followed Catholicism. I never like it never like converted me or anything like that. But I think being in Catholic school for 7 years is the reason why like the Hierophant card doesn't bother me the way that it bothers a lot of people, especially people with religious trauma, because that, openly very Catholic imagery is what I was used to seeing in school. So, and when the Hierophant card comes up for me, it's because 9 times out of 10 it's because it has something to do with school, because I'm still stuck in school. So it's almost always about school. And I don't see any real religious aspects to it at all, because that's just how things ended up happening for me in school growing up. That imagery became very normalized. Like, we had music class in the chapel. It was very, very normalized for me. So I'm still Christian to this day. Like, not like an obnoxious one, but I don't really practice witchcraft. And I know that there are like Christian witches out there, but witchcraft just seems so involved. There's so many levels to it. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I feel like that's something that you have to be called to, and I've just never been called to it. My family knows that I read tarot. They didn't like freak out about it. In fact, they just kind of thought it was funny. They started calling me Miss Cleo, which is especially funny now because now my mom is obsessed with tarot. All she watches now are pick a card readings. So, who is Miss Cleo now? But yeah, that was essentially my religious upbringing. Which leads us to question number 2. What was your first exposure to tarot, and how did you get your first deck? So my first like real exposure to tarot, like outside of like TV shows and movies, was at a sleepover when I was like 17, my senior year of high school. And it's funny because all my friends, well, most of my friends at the time were super into divination, and I was kind of like the odd one out. Like, they were into tarot and runes and pendulums, and I was very much out of the loop when it came to all that stuff. So at a sleepover, the girl that was hosting the sleepover, she ended up pulling out a tarot deck, and it was like a standard yellow box RWS. And she was like, "Okay, who wants a reading?" And so she pulled cards for all of us. And like I said, it wasn't like the best first exposure to tarot, because she ended up pulling, like, I believe it was probably like the Four of Wands, and she was reading straight out of the little white book that came with it. And she was like, "You're going to get married soon. Like, you're gonna get married straight out of high school." And I was like, "What?" You're kidding, right? Like, you better be joking. I was like low key scared. Like, no, I don't want to be married straight out of high school. I did not want that for myself. So, I pretty much discarded everything about tarot. I just chopped it up to being a silly party game, a party trick, something that's not real, because if it was real, I would be married with kids at like 18, and I did not believe that was going to happen. So, and it didn't. It did not. I didn't actually end up getting into tarot myself until, let me try to do the math on that. I was a senior in high school, 2015, and I didn't really start getting into tarot until, I want to say, either it was like late 2019 or early 2020. It was right before the pandemic started, I believe. So we'll just say 5 years. I didn't get into tarot until 5 years later, when I started law school, and I was feeling so out of my depth. The imposter syndrome was real. It still is real. And I was more anxious than ever before. I've always struggled with anxiety, but let me just say it now. Law school is not for the faint of heart. Don't recommend it at all. Don't do it, kids. Just don't do it. I was having panic attacks constantly. I just felt like I was going to be exposed as like a fraud, because I really did not feel like I belonged there. So in order to not go insane, I started looking up meditation videos on YouTube. And the thing is that how the algorithm works. So once you start looking up something that is vaguely related to spirituality, you get recommended things that are also related to spirituality. So after I started watching meditation videos, then I started getting videos about manifestation. And then after that, I started getting videos about like unblocking your chakras. And then I started getting pick a card videos on YouTube. And look, this is a no pick a card slander space. Okay, this is a safe space for pick a cards. I don't take them super seriously. They're just like something that's fun to put on in the background. I They definitely helped me learn tarot. I cannot um, deny that they played a huge role in me learning how other people read. And I think it's really important when you're a beginner just to see just how other people connect the dots when it comes to tarot. That's something that I probably would not have been able to put together myself, or at least as quickly as I did, if I had not started with watching like way too many pick a card readings per day the way I did. And it took me quite a while. I'm kind of getting into the second part of the question now. It took me quite a while to buy my first tarot deck after I started watching these pick a card readings, because after a while I decided that I wanted to start learning tarot for myself, and I downloaded like two different tarot apps. I think the first book I bought was Kitchen Table Tarot, and I read that, and I pretty much like put myself in tarot boot camp. I just became obsessed with learning as much as I could, and I didn't feel comfortable getting a deck right away for some reason. Oh, it didn't feel right to me. It wasn't like anything to do with like that myth about having to be gifted a deck. It was just I felt like I had to have some sort of background before I actually got a physical deck in my hands, as opposed to tarot apps. So by the time I got a physical deck, it was probably August, and I had been learning for maybe like 3 or 4 months. And imagine my shock and surprise and horror and awe, and etc., 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 when I go on Amazon and I type in tarot deck, and I see that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of decks on there. I was just expecting to like pick up just any, like whatever the first result was, but there were so many. Mixtress Ray just released a video about the paradox of choice, and how we get so overwhelmed when we actually have more choices, and that's how it was for me. I was very overwhelmed, so that put me off buying a deck for a couple extra weeks. And eventually I was just like, whatever, I'm just gonna pick something silly and fun and not serious at all. And then when I get my act together, that's what my mindset was like. When I get my act together and can pick something, then I'll get like a serious, real deal deck. So my first tarot deck was Zombie Tarot, and it's kitschy, it's fun, it's silly, but it actually has a surprising amount of depth to it, and it really helped me with learning because it just put everything in this very kind of nonsensical context, but that context helped me. Being able to apply like the traditional meanings of tarot into um, such like a random world, because that's essentially what we do when we read for people. We put the cards into, we should be able to put the cards into any context, and putting the cards into this zombie apocalypse context really helped me actually see like, okay, this is how this applies to this type of situation. So yeah, that is how I got my first tarot deck. Now on to question 3, and oh my goodness, I need to start hurrying it up. I just will ramble and ramble forever for 50 years. Question 3 is, when did tarot become a more important part of your practice, and when, if ever, did you stop being a skeptic? What was your moment of tarot conversion like? So, tarot became really important to me when I experienced a big loss in the family at the end of 2020, and I should have entered grief counseling. I accept that. But I was definitely in a very bad place, and tarot was pretty much the only way that I could process my emotions because I didn't really feel like I could talk to anyone else about it. And to this day, I still use tarot for grief work, and I think it's really powerful how tarot can be used to deal with some really tough emotions, really messy, difficult emotions and difficult times in our lives. As for skepticism, I believe that I'm in the more secular camp when it comes to tarot. I do believe that there is magic to it because, I mean, there really isn't much that can explain the way that tarot works. And honestly, I don't really think that we should try to explain it. But I'm not a witch, and I'm not very new agey. Like I have my crystals, but I'm not super new agey. I definitely was skeptic for a while, but I was definitely converted after getting a reading done by a mutual on my Twitter account. And when I say she read me down, I don't know how she did it. We weren't super close. We are now, but we weren't super close at the time. So there was no way for her to know about the things that I was dealing with regarding grief and anxiety from school, because that just wasn't stuff that I post about on social media. But she saw all of it. She saw all of it in the cards. And that was the point where I was like, okay, this stuff is legit. This is what I want to do. I want to be able to give people insight into their own lives the way that she was able to do for me. I do think that there is a predictive aspect to tarot. I know it's kind of getting to be an unpopular thing, but I've personally seen it. I've personally been able to peer into the many possibilities of things that could happen in the future. Like I said, I can't explain it and I don't want to. So while I am of the secular camp, I don't know. I'm just gonna leave that. I'm just gonna say that there's a higher power controlling that. I know what I've experienced with the cards, and it really is amazing and should go without explanation, I think. Alright, question 4 is, when did you start reading for others or start to read for clients, and why? Or if not, have you ever thought about it? So, I believe that the best way to learn tarot is to read for others. When I first got my deck, I read for family members and friends. And then soon afterwards, I started doing free readings on my Twitter account, which was kind of overwhelming because here's the thing: if you say, okay, offering free tarot pulls, offering free readings, there are people on Twitter that literally spend all day searching free tarot readings and they reply to every single account that says that because they are that desperate for a free reading. So here I was expecting to just get responses from like my followers, and then I was inundated with dozens of total strangers asking me for readings. It was both scary, but at the same time, I feel like I needed that. I needed a clean slate almost, if that makes sense. Like, I needed someone that I had no clue who they were to be able to test the waters without being afraid that I was going to get something wrong. And today, I still do free readings on Twitter. I do a lot of readings for my mom's friends. They stay calling me, usually to like ask about work related things or about their ex husbands and stuff like that. I still do readings for family, but I don't charge for readings, and I don't think I ever will. I've gotten like some huge tips. Like, I'll always say like, oh, if you want to, you can tip. So I've gotten some pretty big tips from my free readings, but I just don't feel comfortable charging for them. I feel like once money gets involved, you as the reader feel obligated to. You worry too much about the reading being accurate, and you end up kind of getting into your own head a bit too much instead of just focusing on, just giving the reading. And another thing is that when a client pays for your reading, I feel like they also tend to expect the reading to be positive. So if the reading isn't all sunshine and rainbows, like sometimes they'll leave a negative review even if that reading was technically accurate. And I don't want to be paid to lie to people. I don't want to sugarcoat anything, and I don't want to feel pressured to sugarcoat anything. So because of that, I don't want to charge people. I don't want to involve money into it. But who knows? Anything could happen. I could decide, you know what? I'll like charge $10 for a reading. I still feel like weird about charging a lot of money for it. I don't know why. I just don't want to be one of those people that charges like $100 for a reading. I don't judge people who do, but personally, I don't know why. I feel like I haven't been reading long enough to charge that much. So yeah, if I ever do, I would definitely like stick to the very low end of charging rates. All right, next is question 5, which is, what are some of your qualities from your background that make you a good reader? That is, what do you bring to the table as a reader, and what do you think your tarot superpower is? So, with this question, a few things, but for the most part, I feel like being a student of law and um, being in pre law and undergrad has really taught me how to think analytically and be incredibly objective when it comes to pretty much anything. Like, when you enter law school, they basically rewire your brain to function in the most objective way possible. And objectivity is so important when it comes to reading tarot. You don't want to insert your own biases into someone else's reading. I also think, so we get taught a very specific code of ethics, And I've transferred a lot of the rules from that code to how I read for clients. It's a very similar relationship. People who are coming to you for a tarot reading, they want confidentiality. They want to feel like they're being heard. They want to feel like they're being respected. Because, when you think about it, so when someone comes to you for a reading, they are trusting you with a lot. So being analytical, being objective, and having a strict code of ethics, I think, are the few things I can transfer from my educational and hopefully soon to be career background into tarot. That sounded like a job interview just now. Transferable skills. But anyway, moving on to number 6. And our last question is, when did you get into TarotTube? What is your relationship with tarot and social media? So I got into TarotTube not very long after it was probably like maybe a month. So I would say around September 2020. So that's about a month after I got my first deck. I had recently found out about indie decks, and I was just like, if I end up not liking this deck, I can't get that money back. So I don't even remember what deck it was, but I ended up Googling it. And in the search results, a video popped up. And like I said, I don't remember what deck it was. I don't even remember which channel it was. I know, like, probably one of the first channels I ended up finding was Mixtress Ray and Lisa Pepez. So I can only assume that was a deck reviewed by one of those channels. But after that, the rest was history. I was mad actually that there was a whole community on YouTube that had flip throughs and reviews, and that here I was buying these decks that I knew nothing about, save for like the few pictures that would be on Amazon, and wasting money because I stupidly like forgot that I could just return them when I could have just watched a flip through. And once I found TarotTube, I got hooked. I was obsessively watching TarotTube videos, and I went through the phase I think a lot of people go through where they just start watching all the collection videos, all the reviews, and just wanting to know about every single deck that's out there. And I started accumulating decks very quickly because I have no self control. So luckily, that has evened itself out, that's worked itself out. We're good now. As for my relationship with social media, I do have an Instagram account that I don't really use anymore. Um, and obviously, now this channel. I also belong to a few tarot Facebook groups. I'm on the tarot Reddit page. I follow a few tarot talkers on TikTok, but like TikTok is hell, especially tarot TikTok. So I am pretty involved on social media when it comes to what did I just say? When it comes to um, tarot social media. I think what's really interesting is how even though there's the greater tarot community, there are like subgroups, subcultures within the tarot community. I think, gosh, who was it that brought this up? It might have been Levi. I don't remember what his channel name is, but I feel like it was him that brought it up in one of his videos. That there are like multiple subgroups within TarotTube and just even like the general tarot community on social media. You have the TarotTube that we're on, which discusses decks and education about tarot, and then there's the part that actually like does tarot, that actually like does the pick a card readings and things of that nature. So it's interesting that there is like a divide. There really isn't as much overlap between those two sides. On TikTok, it's mostly people doing those "this message is for you, like to claim" videos, but I found some people who kind of focus more on education and also like on their deck collections. Reddit and Facebook groups are a bit of a hodgepodge. Instagram is mostly tags and pretty pictures and pick a card readings. And honestly, I enjoy it all. Even TikTok sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. I definitely think that with the pandemic, tarot and spirituality in general became kind of trendy. And I've seen like some accounts eventually fall off because they kind of just hopped onto the trend and then realized that they weren't really as into it. But for accounts that stuck around, yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed viewing their content. And I think we all have a little bit to learn from each other. Like I said, I used to like learn from pick a card readings on YouTube. And I got a lot of tips from the tarot Reddit page as well. I don't feel forced to post readings on Twitter. I kind of just do it when I feel like it. So I don't know. I feel like I have a pretty well-rounded relationship with tarot and social media. I just love seeing what everyone has to offer. So that is it. That was my hashtag tarot origin story. Thank you again to Janaki at Catomancy Tarot for the super interesting tag, and I wish you all the best with your research. That's it for me today. Expect more VRs in the future and some other fun videos. I don't know how to end this, so I'm just gonna say bye.